The massive hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with the sounds of 1,000 different languages. Translators worked overtime as representatives from hundreds of worlds discussed trade agreements, border disputes, and scientific discoveries. It was another routine meeting on Viridian Prime, the neutral planet where all major galactic decisions were made. Commander Zixthor of the Krillian Empire stood up from his seat. His forearms gestured for attention, and the hall slowly grew quiet. The Krillians were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors and brilliant strategists. When Zixthor spoke, people listened. "I have a question that has bothered me for years," Zixthor announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Why does nobody attack Earth?" A confused murmur rippled through the assembly. Several ambassadors looked at each other with puzzled expressions. It seemed like such a strange question. Ambassador Quella from the Nexari Collective stood up. Her people were known as the galaxy's best record keepers. If anyone had the data, it would be her. "Earth is protected by standard council laws," she said carefully. "They are a developing species." "That is not what I mean," Zixthor interrupted. "I mean, why does nobody even try? Earth has no real defenses. Their technology is centuries behind ours. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons. Their ships barely go half the speed of light. Yet in the past 50 years, not a single empire has attempted to claim their resource-rich planet. Why?" The hall fell silent. It was a good question. Earth sat in a perfect location with abundant water, diverse minerals, and a stable star. By all logic, someone should have tried to take it by now. Quella accessed her datapad and began reading. "Earth's defensive capabilities are indeed minimal. They have chemical rockets, primitive nuclear weapons, and basic satellite systems. Their military technology would not last 10 minutes against even a small assault fleet." She paused, looking confused by her own data. "Yet you are correct, Commander. No major power has made any aggressive moves toward Earth." A representative from the Thexian hierarchy spoke up. "Perhaps they are simply not worth the effort? Small planet, isolated location?" "No," Zixthor shook his head. "Earth has more biodiversity than most garden worlds. Their oceans alone contain resources that would fund a small empire, and they are not isolated. They sit near several major trade routes. Someone should want that planet." Another voice joined the discussion. It was Tim Rack, the Council's chief historian. He was old even by his species' long-lived standards. His scales had turned silver with age, and his eyes held the wisdom of someone who had studied galactic history for centuries. "Commander Zixthor raises an interesting point," Tim Rack said slowly. "I have noticed something odd in the historical records. Several empires have sent scout fleets toward Earth over the past decades. Each time these fleets returned and recommended against any hostile action. However, the reasons given in these reports are always vague or classified. The Vrax went there," someone called out from the back. 20 years ago. Everyone in the hall tensed at the mention of the Vrax dominion. The Vrax were known as the galaxy's most ruthless conquerors. They had claimed over 200 worlds in the past century alone. They took what they wanted and crushed any resistance without mercy. Quella checked her records again. "Confirmed. The Vrax sent a full survey fleet to Earth's solar system. They spent 3 months there, conducting detailed scans and observations. Then they returned home and declared the entire Sol system off-limits to all Vrax operations. No explanation was given. That declaration still stands today." "That makes no sense," Zixthor said, his frustration growing. "The Vrax do not back down from weak opponents. They especially do not declare rich worlds off-limits without a reason." Time Rack's eyes gleamed with curiosity. "Perhaps there is something about Earth that we do not understand. Something that makes even the Vrax cautious. Or perhaps they found something there," another ambassador suggested. "A hidden defense system? An alliance with a more powerful species?" Quella shook her head. "Our intelligence shows nothing of the sort. Earth has been contacted by several species for peaceful trade and cultural exchange. The humans are friendly and eager to learn. They have no secret weapons or hidden allies. They are exactly what they appear to be. A young species taking their first steps into the wider galaxy." "Then what scares everyone away?" Zixthor demanded. The question hung in the air. Nobody had an answer. It was a mystery that defied all logic and military strategy. A defenseless planet should not be left alone in a galaxy full of empires hungry for expansion. Tim Rack made a decision. "I will investigate this matter personally. Give me access to all records regarding Earth and human contact. I want reports from every species that has visited their system. I want to know why the Vracs retreated. I want to understand what makes Earth different. The council voted quickly. Everyone was curious now. The mystery of Earth had captured their attention. Timrak was granted full access to all relevant files, classified or otherwise. As the meeting ended and the ambassadors filed out, small groups formed to discuss this strange puzzle. Some laughed it off as paranoia. Others wondered if there was a legitimate reason for concern. A few made quiet notes to review their own species' policies regarding Earth. Timrak returned to his quarters and immediately began his research. His walls were soon covered with holographic displays showing everything the galaxy knew about Earth and its human inhabitants. There were thousands of files, reports, and observations spanning decades. He started with the basics. Earth was the third planet in a yellow dwarf star system. It had one large moon and a variety of climates. The dominant species called themselves humans, and they had only achieved space travel within the last century. They had built a small space station, sent probes to nearby planets, and landed on their moon. By galactic standards, they were babies taking their first steps. But as Timrak dug deeper into the files, he began to notice strange things. Little details that did not quite fit. Comments in reports that seemed innocent but hinted at something more. References to human behavior that confused trained xenologists. Medical scans that made biologists uncomfortable. The Varax report was still classified at the highest level. Even with his new access, Timrak could not open it. But he found something else. A personal log from a Vrax officer who had been on that expedition. The log had been filed incorrectly and escaped classification. Timrak opened it and began to read. What he found made his blood run cold. The officer had written, "We found the humans living on a crashed colony ship. They had been there for over a year. By all rights, they should have been dead. Instead, they had thrived. When we offered to conquer their homeworld for their protection, their leader looked at us with eyes that held no fear. She smiled and said no. I have faced warriors across 100 worlds. None have ever frightened me the way that human smile did." Timrak sat back in his chair, his mind racing. What kind of species inspired fear in the Vrax? He knew this investigation would take him down a path that might change how the entire galaxy viewed humanity. The question was no longer why nobody attacked Earth. The question was what would they find if they dug deep enough to discover the truth. Timrak spent the next 3 days buried in research. His office became a maze of holographic displays, each one showing different aspects of human contact with alien species. He barely slept, driven by a growing sense that he was uncovering something important. His first major breakthrough came from the Lothari Exploration Corps. The Lothari were peaceful explorers who mapped dangerous regions of space. They had encountered humans 5 years ago in the Kepler Belt, a treacherous area filled with unstable asteroids and spatial anomalies. Timrak requested a live interview with Captain Selvan, the Lothari officer who had made first contact. The captain appeared on his screen, his blue skin darker with age but his eyes still sharp and alert. "I remember the humans well," Selvan said when asked. "We were mapping a particularly dangerous asteroid field when we detected their ship. It was a small research vessel called the Discovery. We tried to warn them about the spatial anomalies in the region, but they said they were specifically there to study those anomalies." "Did they seem reckless?" Timrak asked. Selvan paused, choosing his words carefully. "Not reckless, determined. Their captain was a man named Jake Morrison. He thanked us for the warning but explained that understanding dangerous phenomena was how humans learned. I thought it was just brave talk. What changed your mind?" "An anomaly opened right between our ships," Selvan said, his voice growing quiet. "It was a temporal fracture. Both our vessels were caught in its gravitational pull. Our computers calculated that we had maybe 30 seconds before being torn apart. I ordered my crew to prepare for emergency evacuation." Timrak leaned forward. "What did the humans do?" "Captain Morrison did something my computers said was impossible. He fired his engines at full power directly toward the anomaly, while simultaneously venting all his ship's atmosphere from one side. The combination created an asymmetric thrust that shouldn't have worked. Our computers gave it a 3% chance of success. But it worked?" Selvan nodded slowly. "It worked. His ship broke free of the gravitational pull and managed to extend a tether to us. They pulled us to safety. When I asked Morrison how he knew that maneuver would work, he shrugged and said he had a gut feeling." "A gut feeling?" "He bet his entire crew's lives on instinct and won. How did your crew react? My science officer analyzed the maneuver afterward. According to all known physics, it should not have succeeded. The variables were too complex, the timing too precise. Yet Morrison did it in seconds without computer assistance. When we returned to Lothari space, I filed a report recommending extreme caution around humans. They do not think like us. They do not calculate risk the same way. Team Rack thanked the captain and closed the connection. He sat in silence for a long moment, processing what he had learned. Humans trusted instinct over calculation. That alone made them unpredictable. His next interview was with a Zenthani trade delegate named Korath. The Zenthani were merchants who had established peaceful trade relations with Earth. Korath had spent 2 years living among humans in a city called Seattle. Tell me about human daily life, Timrak requested. What did you observe? Korath laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Where do I start? Humans are the most contradictory species I have ever met. They are capable of incredible kindness and terrible violence, often from the same individual. They cry over injured animals but eat other animals for food. They create beautiful art while simultaneously developing weapons of mass destruction. That sounds like most developing species, Timrak noted. No, Korath said firmly. It is different with humans. Most species move past their violent phase before reaching space. Humans brought their violence with them. They have active military organizations. They still fight wars among themselves. Yet they also have charity organizations, hospitals, and rescue services. They will risk their lives to save complete strangers. Can you give me an example? Korath nodded. I was in Seattle during what humans call an earthquake. The ground shook violently. Buildings collapsed. It was terrifying. I was trapped under rubble, injured and unable to move. A human woman found me. Her name was Betty Walsh. She was a teacher, not a rescue worker. She had no training, but she spent 4 hours digging me out with her bare hands. Her hands were bleeding. She had cracked ribs, but she would not leave me. That is admirable, Timrak said. That is not the interesting part, Korath continued. While she was digging, she talked to me. She told me stories to keep me calm. She told me about other disasters humans had survived. Earthquakes, floods, fires, storms. She talked about these catastrophes like they were normal. When I asked how humans could live on such a dangerous planet, she seemed confused by the question. She said Earth was home and you do not abandon your home just because it is difficult. Timrak made notes as Korath spoke. The pattern was becoming clearer. Humans did not just survive adversity. They expected it. They prepared for it. They almost seemed comfortable with it. His final interview of the day was with Dr. Vexira, a Zenthani xenobiologist who had examined human volunteers. Vexira appeared on screen surrounded by medical equipment and holographic displays of human anatomy. I have studied hundreds of species, Vexira began without preamble. Humans are biological nightmares. Timrak blinked in surprise. That seems harsh. Harsh but accurate, Vexira replied. Let me show you. She pulled up a holographic human skeleton. Humans evolved on a high-gravity world. Their bone density is 40% higher than most spacefaring species. Their muscles are packed with fast twitch fibers designed for sudden explosive movement. They can lift objects many times their own weight. Many species are strong, Timrak observed. Strength is the least concerning aspect, Vexira said. She changed the display to show a human circulatory system. Humans have a redundant cardiovascular system. They have backup pathways for blood flow. You can block major arteries and they will survive long enough for medical treatment. Their hearts can continue beating even when severely damaged. She pulled up another display. Their immune systems are incredibly aggressive. Human bodies attack foreign organisms with such ferocity that human medicine focuses largely on calming their immune response. They can survive infections that would kill most species. What about their brain? Timrak asked. Vexira's expression grew darker. Their brains are the most terrifying part. Humans have a gland that produces chemicals called adrenaline and cortisol. In moments of stress or danger, these chemicals flood their system. Time seems to slow down for them. They become stronger, faster, and feel less pain. They can perform feats of strength impossible under normal conditions. I have documented cases of human mothers lifting vehicles to save trapped children. That sounds like a useful adaptation, Timrak said. Useful and horrifying, Vexira corrected, because humans can trigger this response voluntarily. They can make themselves faster and stronger through sheer will. They call it pushing through or second wind. They override their body's safety limits regularly. Human athletes do it for sport. Human soldiers do it in combat. Timrak felt a chill run through him. Are you saying humans are natural warriors? I am saying humans are natural survivors, Vexira replied. Everything about their biology is designed to keep them alive in hostile conditions. They heal from injuries that would cripple others. They adapt to environments that would kill most species. They are persistence hunters who evolved to chase prey until it died of exhaustion. Humans do not give up. Their biology will not let them. The screen went dark as the interview ended. Timrak sat alone in his office, surrounded by data about humanity. Each piece of information added to a growing picture that deeply unsettled him. Humans were not just another species. They were something different. Something the galaxy had never encountered before. He thought about the Vrax report still classified and locked away. What had the Vrax seen that made them retreat? What had that human leader said that frightened a Vrax warrior? Timrak had a feeling he was only beginning to understand the truth about Earth. Timrak could not stop thinking about the Vrax expedition. For 3 days he tried every method he knew to access the classified report. Every attempt failed. The Vrax had locked that information behind military-grade encryption that even Council authority could not break. But Timrak had spent centuries as a historian. He knew that information always left traces. People talked. Officers kept personal logs. Details leaked through cracks in even the tightest security. He just had to find those cracks. His breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A junior Vrax officer named Krath had been reassigned to a border station after the Earth expedition. The officer had filed a request for psychological counseling, citing nightmares and anxiety. The request had been denied, but it remained in the medical database. Timrak pulled every string he had to arrange a private conversation with Krath. It took 2 days of negotiations and several favors owed to Council security, but finally, Krath agreed to speak with him. The Vrax officer appeared on screen looking tired. His scales were dull and his eyes held a haunted quality that Timrak had seen in soldiers who had experienced trauma. I do not know what you want from me, Krath said quietly. I signed confidentiality agreements. I cannot discuss the mission. I do not need official details, Timrak said gently. I am trying to understand why your superiors declared Earth off limits. Other species need to know if there is a legitimate threat. Krath was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed, a deep rumbling sound. There is a threat, just not the kind you think. Explain. We found a human colony ship, Krath began. It had crashed on a moon in the outer system. The moon was classified as barely habitable. Thin atmosphere, extreme temperatures, dangerous wildlife. The crash had happened 18 months before we arrived. Were there survivors? Timrak asked. That is the problem, Krath said. There should not have been. The ship broke apart on impact. Most of the crew died immediately. Maybe 80 humans survived the initial crash. They had limited supplies, no communication equipment, and no way off the moon. By every calculation, they should have been dead within weeks. But they were not? Krath shook his head slowly. They were not only alive, they were thriving. They had built shelters from the ship's wreckage. They had established farms using seeds from the ship's botanical section. They had mapped the entire region and created a defense perimeter against the local predators. They had a functioning society. Timrak leaned forward, fascinated. How did they manage all that? We asked them the same question, Krath replied. Their leader was a woman named Lisa Chang. Before the crash, she had been the colony administrator. After the crash, she became their mayor. She told us they survived because they had no other choice. She said humans are very good at adapting when the alternative is death. What about the predators you mentioned? Krath's expression grew darker. The moon had creatures we called razorbacks. They were pack hunters, about the size of your average Vrax warrior, with natural armor and teeth that could pierce metal. Extremely aggressive. When we scanned the area around the human settlement, we found the remains of over 200 razorbacks. The humans killed them? Not just killed them, Krath said. They hunted them to near extinction in the region. The humans had built traps, created weapons from scrap metal, and organized hunting parties. One of the survivors was a nurse named Helen Carter. She showed us scars from fighting off 3 razorbacks while defending the settlement's medical tent. She told this story while smiling like it was a fond memory. Timrak felt that familiar chill again. What happened when you made contact? We approached peacefully, Krath continued. We offered assistance. We told them we could rescue them and take them to safety. Lisa Chang thanked us politely, but said they did not need rescuing. They were waiting for an Earth rescue mission that they knew would eventually come. Then what changed? Krath was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. Our commander, General Throck, made a mistake. He saw how resourceful the humans were. He saw their crashed ship and desperate situation. He thought they would be easy to manipulate. So he made them an offer. What kind of offer? He offered to conquer Earth for them. He said the Vraks could protect humanity from other species. We would provide advanced technology and military protection in exchange for Earth's resources and loyalty. He thought they would be grateful. He thought they would accept. I assume they refused, Timrak said. Lisa Chang listened to his entire proposal, Krath said. She did not interrupt. She did not get angry. When Throck finished speaking, she smiled. Then she said something I will never forget. Timrak waited, hardly daring to breathe. She said, "Look around you, General. You see a crashed ship and desperate survivors. We see home. We have been here for 18 months with nothing but wreckage and determination. We have fought off predators that outnumbered us 20-1. We have survived temperatures that fluctuate by 40 degrees daily. We have built farms in toxic soil and purified water from poisonous ice. We did all of this while burying our friends and family. Now imagine what we would do if you gave us an actual reason to be angry." The words hung in the air between them. Timrak felt his skin prickle with an emotion he rarely experienced. Fear. "What did your general do?" he asked quietly. He ended the conversation immediately. Krath replied. "We returned to our ships and left the system." During the flight home, Throck was silent. When we reached Vrak space, he filed his report and declared Earth off limits. I asked him later why he backed down. He said he had fought in 30 campaigns across 100 worlds. He had faced warriors, soldiers, and fanatics, but he had never seen someone look at an entire invasion fleet and feel nothing but mild annoyance. "She was not afraid?" Timrak asked. "That is what scared us," Krath said. "She was not afraid." None of them were. An engineer named Paul Griffin even offered to show us their defensive preparations. They had rigged explosives throughout their settlement. If attacked, they planned to collapse the entire cave system on top of themselves and their attackers. When we asked why they would do that, Griffin looked confused. He said it was better to die free than live as slaves. He said it like it was obvious. Timrak sat back, his mind racing through the implications. They were prepared for mutual destruction. More than that, Krath corrected. They were comfortable with it. They had discussed it, planned it, and were ready to execute it without hesitation. That is when I understood. Humans do not just fight to win. They fight to make sure their enemies lose, even if it costs them everything. "That sounds like madness," Timrak said. "That is what makes them so dangerous," Krath replied. "It is not madness to them. It is principle. They call it spite or stubbornness or determination. They have dozens of words for the concept of refusing to give up even when giving up would be logical. Their culture celebrates people who died rather than surrender. They tell stories about last stands and hopeless battles like they are romantic tales." "You said you have nightmares," Timrak said carefully. "What do you dream about?" Krath looked away from the camera. "I dream about Lisa Chang's smile. It was not cruel. It was not angry. It was just confident. She knew exactly what would happen if we attacked her planet, and she knew we knew. That is why we left. Not because we could not conquer Earth, but because the cost of conquering Earth would destroy us even in victory." The conversation ended shortly after. Timrak sat in silence, staring at the blank screen. He understood now why the Vraks had retreated. They had looked into the eyes of humanity and seen something that even they, the galaxy's most ruthless conquerors, could not face. He pulled up his notes and began organizing his findings. The picture was becoming clearer with each piece of information. Humans were not just survivors. They were not just warriors. They were something more fundamental and terrifying. They were a species that simply refused to lose no matter the cost. Timrak knew his investigation needed a different perspective. All his research so far had been from brief encounters or emergency situations. He needed to understand humans in their natural environment, during peaceful times. He needed someone who had lived among them long enough to see beyond the surface. That led him to Ambassador Ralthine, a Zenthani diplomat who had been stationed on Earth for 15 years. Ralthine held the record for the longest continuous assignment to a developing world. Most ambassadors requested transfers after a year or two. Ralphine had stayed by choice. Timrak arranged to visit Earth personally. It was a long journey from Viridian Prime to the Sol system, but he needed to see this planet with his own eyes. He needed to understand what kept Ralphine there for so long. The ambassador met him at a small orbital station. Ralphine looked different from most Synthani. He wore human-style clothing and had adopted some of their mannerisms. His movements were more expressive, more animated. He greeted Timrak with a warm handshake, a very human gesture. "Welcome to Earth," Ralphine said with genuine enthusiasm. "I'm glad you wanted to see it for yourself. Most investigators just review reports and never actually visit." "I prefer primary sources," Timrak replied. "Tell me, why have you stayed here so long?" Ralphine smiled. "Because humans are endlessly fascinating. Come, let me show you." They traveled down to Earth in a small shuttle. Timrak watched the planet grow larger in the viewport. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and white clouds swirling across its surface. It looked peaceful. It looked safe. Nothing about it suggested danger. They landed in a city called San Francisco. Ralphine had arranged for them to stay at his apartment overlooking the bay. As they walked through the city streets, Timrak observed humans going about their daily lives. They seemed so normal, so ordinary. "What am I supposed to see?" Timrak asked. "Everything," Ralphine replied. "Watch and learn." Over the next few days, Ralphine showed Timrak the human world. They visited museums filled with human history. They watched human entertainment. They ate human food and listened to human music. Timrak began to understand what Ralphine meant about humans being fascinating. One evening they sat in Ralphine's apartment watching human movies. The ambassador had prepared a selection of films specifically for Timrak's education. "Humans love disaster stories," Ralphine explained as he started the first film. "This one is about an asteroid hitting Earth." Timrak watched as the movie portrayed humanity facing extinction from a cosmic impact. The humans in the film worked together, sacrificed themselves, and ultimately found a way to save their planet. It was dramatic and emotional. "This is fiction, yes?" Timrak asked. "Yes, but based on real concerns," Ralphine replied. "Humans have identified dozens of ways their species could go extinct. Asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, climate change, nuclear war, artificial intelligence uprising, pandemic diseases, solar flares, and more. Then they make entertainment about surviving these disasters. Why would they entertain themselves with stories of extinction?" Ralphine pulled up another film. "This one is about zombies. The dead coming back to life and attacking the living." Then another. "This one is about robots taking over." Another. "Alien invasion." Another. "Nuclear apocalypse." Timrak watched clips from each film, his confusion growing. "These are their entertainment choices?" "Not just entertainment," Ralphine corrected. "These are thought experiments. Humans imagine the worst possible scenarios and then figure out how to survive them. Every disaster movie ends with some humans surviving. Every apocalypse story includes people rebuilding. They do not make these stories to scare themselves. They make them to prepare themselves." "That seems excessive," Timrak observed. "Does it?" Ralphine pulled up a human website. "This is a survival forum where humans discuss emergency preparedness. Look at the topics. How to purify water, how to grow food without electricity, how to defend yourself during social collapse, how to navigate without technology. These are ordinary civilians planning for disasters that may never happen." Timrak scrolled through the forum, his concern growing. "They are preparing for war?" "They are preparing for everything," Ralphine said. "Let me introduce you to someone." The next day they visited a human research facility. Ralphine had arranged a meeting with Dr. Karen Phillips, a planetary scientist who worked for NASA, the Human Space Agency. Dr. Phillips was a cheerful woman in her 40s with graying hair and bright eyes. She welcomed them into her office, which was covered with charts and models of the solar system. "Ambassador Ralphine said you wanted to know about our contingency plans," Phillips said, offering them coffee, a human beverage. "You have contingency plans?" Timrak asked. "Of course," Phillips replied, seeming surprised by the question. "We have multiple backup plans for species survival. There is the Svalbard seed vault in Norway that contains samples of every crop plant. We have genetic databases stored in multiple locations, including on the Moon. We are working on establishing permanent colonies on Mars. We have underground bunkers that can sustain populations for years. We even have plans to send generation ships to other star systems if Earth becomes uninhabitable. Why do you need all of this? Timrak asked. Phillips looked confused. In case something happens to Earth? It would be irresponsible not to prepare. We have had 5 major extinction events in our planet's history. The dinosaurs died out from an asteroid impact. We could be next, or it could be a supervolcano eruption, or solar radiation, or any number of things. We need to ensure that humanity survives no matter what happens. Does this worry you? Timrak asked carefully. Worry me? Phillips laughed. No, it makes me feel safer. Knowing we have backup plans means we can handle whatever comes. That is just good planning. After the meeting, Timrak and Ralthien walked through a human park. Children played on equipment while their parents watched. Everything seemed so peaceful. Do you understand now? Ralthien asked. They are paranoid, Timrak said. No, Ralthien corrected gently. They are prepared. There is a difference. Humans have survived multiple extinction-level events on their own planet. They have endured ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters. Every time they came back stronger. That is not paranoia. That is experience. They sat on a bench overlooking the bay. Ralthien continued his explanation. Let me tell you what I have learned in 15 years. Humans are optimists with contingency plans. They hope for the best while preparing for the worst. They believe in peace but train for war. They want cooperation but are ready for conflict. This is not a contradiction to them. This is wisdom. It sounds exhausting, Timrak said. It is who they are, Ralthien replied. You asked me why I stayed so long? Because I wanted to understand this mindset, and I finally do. Humans do not plan for disasters because they expect them. They plan because they refuse to be unprepared. The difference is subtle but important. Timrak thought about everything he had seen. The movies about survival, the forums discussing preparation, the seed vaults and genetic backups, the space colonies and generation ships. Every piece fit into a larger pattern. They are planning to survive us, he said quietly. Ralthien nodded. They are planning to survive everything, including other species, including galactic empires, including extinction events. They look at the universe and see threats everywhere, so they prepare for all of them. That makes them dangerous, Timrak said. That makes them inevitable, Ralthien corrected. Think about it. Every other species achieved peace before reaching space. We solved our problems, unified our people, and then explored the stars. Humans did the opposite. They reached space while still fighting among themselves. They built nuclear weapons before they built starships. They weaponized everything they discovered. Yet they are friendly, Timrak observed. Welcoming. Open to trade and cooperation. Yes, Ralthien agreed. That is what makes them so remarkable. They are capable of great violence but choose cooperation. They could be conquerors but prefer to be explorers. They have the capacity for destruction but build instead. That choice is what makes them powerful. Timrak stood up looking out at the human city. Millions of humans lived here, going about their lives completely unaware of the galactic discussions about their species. They laughed and played and worked. They seemed so normal, but underneath that normalcy was something else. A preparation for disaster, a readiness for conflict, a determination to survive no matter the cost. I need to speak with human military leadership, Timrak said. I need to understand their military thinking. Ralthien smiled. I was hoping you would say that. I have arranged a meeting for tomorrow. You are going to meet Colonel Steve Manning. He runs Earth's defense coordination. That conversation will either reassure you or terrify you. Probably both. As the sun set over San Francisco, Timrak realized his investigation was approaching its most crucial phase. He had learned about human biology, human survival, and human preparation. Now he needed to understand how humans thought about war. He had a feeling that conversation would change everything. The meeting took place at a secure military facility outside Washington, the capital of one of Earth's major nations. Timrak felt nervous as security personnel checked his credentials. Human soldiers stood at attention, their faces neutral but alert. Everything about the facility spoke of discipline and readiness. Colonel Steve Manning met them in a plain conference room. He was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair cut short and eyes that missed nothing. He wore a military uniform decorated with ribbons that Ralthien quietly explained represented various campaigns and achievements. Manning shook hands with both visitors and gestured for them to sit. Ambassador Ralthien tells me you are investigating why nobody attacks Earth, Manning said directly. I can save you some time. Nobody attacks because everyone is smart enough not to. Can you explain that? Timrak asked. Manning pulled up a holographic display showing Earth and its solar system. Let me be clear about something first. We know we are technologically inferior to most galactic species. Your ships are faster. Your weapons are more powerful. In a straight fight, we would lose badly. We are not stupid. We understand our limitations. Then why do you sound confident? Timrak asked. Because war is not about technology alone, Manning replied. It is about will, strategy, and cost-benefit analysis. Let me walk you through what would happen if someone decided to invade Earth. He manipulated the display, highlighting different points in space. First, any invasion fleet would be spotted weeks before arrival. We have satellites, telescopes, and monitoring stations throughout our system. We would have time to prepare. Prepare how? Timrak asked. You said yourself that you cannot match superior technology. Manning smiled grimly. We do not need to match it. We need to make the cost unacceptable. Tell me, what does an invading force want? Resources? Territory? A functional planet they can use? Usually yes, Timrak confirmed. Then they have already lost, Manning said flatly. Because if we cannot win, we will make sure they cannot either. Let me show you. The display changed to show Earth's major cities. We have identified every critical piece of infrastructure on the planet. Power plants, water treatment facilities, communication hubs, transportation networks. If invasion is imminent, we can destroy all of it in under 6 hours. Timrak felt a chill. You would destroy your own planet? We would deny it to our enemies, Manning corrected. There is a difference. If someone wants Earth's resources, they need a functioning planet. If they want slaves, they need a living population. If they want territory, they need intact cities. We can remove all of those incentives before they land a single soldier. That is suicide, Timrak said quietly. That is deterrence, Manning replied. And it is not suicide if some of us survive. We have deep bunkers that can sustain populations for decades. We have hidden supply caches. We have resistance networks planned for every continent. Even if an enemy takes the surface, they will face endless guerrilla warfare from an enemy they cannot negotiate with. Ralphine spoke up. Perhaps you should tell him about the Mars Protocol. Manning nodded. The Mars Protocol is our final contingency. We have established hidden colonies on Mars, the moons of Jupiter, and several asteroid bases. These colonies are self-sufficient and unknown to most galactic species. If Earth falls, they survive, and they are equipped with everything needed to rebuild human civilization over the next 1,000 years. More importantly, Manning continued, those colonies have weapons, long-range kinetic bombardment systems, rock accelerators that can launch asteroids at relativistic speeds. If Earth is conquered, those colonies will not stop attacking. They will turn our entire solar system into a weapon. They will make this region of space so dangerous that no species will want to be here. Timrak struggled to process this information. You have planned for mutual destruction on a system-wide scale? We have planned for every scenario, Manning said. That is what militaries do. We think about threats and create responses. Our response to overwhelming force is to make victory meaningless. An enemy can conquer Earth, but they will gain nothing except endless war and destruction. But surely some scenarios allow for peaceful surrender? Timrak asked. Manning's expression hardened. Humans do not surrender. We retreat, we regroup, we adapt, but we do not surrender. Let me tell you about human military history. He pulled up historical images, battles and wars from Earth's past. This is Stalingrad. Enemy forces surrounded the city. Every logical calculation said we should surrender. Instead, humans fought building by building, street by street for months. This is Dunkirk, where we evacuated an entire army from certain destruction. This is Guadalcanal, where we held an island against impossible odds. This is Thermopylae, where 300 soldiers held off an army of thousands. The images continued. Our history is full of last stands, hopeless defenses, and impossible victories. We tell stories about these battles to our children. We celebrate the people who refused to give up, even when giving up was logical. This is not just military strategy. This is cultural identity. That sounds like insanity, Timrak said. That sounds like humanity, Manning corrected. Let me ask you a question. How many species in the galaxy would fight after losing their homeworld? Timrak thought carefully. Most species would surrender at that point. The war would be over. Exactly, Manning said. For most species, losing the homeworld means accepting defeat. For humans, losing Earth would just make us angrier. We would scatter across the galaxy and wage war for generations. We would never stop. Never forgive. Never forget. Ask yourself, do you want an enemy like that? The room fell silent. Timrak understood now. The threat was not that humans could win a war. The threat was that humans would never let the war end. There is something else you should understand, Manning continued. Humans have a concept we call spite. It means doing something harmful to yourself just to hurt your enemy more. It is irrational by most species standards. But it is very human. Can you give an example? Timrak asked. During one of our wars, a human pilot's plane was damaged and going down. He was going to die either way, so he pointed his plane at an enemy ship and crashed into it, taking it down with him. We have hundreds of stories like that. Soldiers throwing themselves on grenades to save their comrades. Civilians refusing to flee from disasters to help others. People sacrificing themselves not because it achieves victory, but because it prevents the enemy from having theirs. Manning looked directly at Timrak. That is what makes us dangerous. We are not the strongest species. We are not the smartest. We are not the most advanced. But we are the most stubborn. We would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. That is not a figure of speech. That is literal fact. So your entire defense strategy is based on making invasion not worth the cost, Timrak said. Our defense strategy is based on reality, Manning replied. We cannot stop an invasion force with superior technology. But we can make sure that invasion destroys everything they came for. We can guarantee that occupying Earth costs more than any possible benefit. We can ensure that even in defeat we hurt our enemies so badly they wish they had never come here. Has this strategy been tested? Timrak asked. Manning smiled slightly. The Vraks know. They came here 20 years ago. They looked at our defenses and our preparations. They did the math. They realized that conquering Earth would cost them more than it was worth, even if they won. Smart commanders know when not to fight. Ralphine spoke up again. Tell him about the cultural aspect, Manning nodded. Military strategy is only part of the equation. The other part is human culture. We are a violent species. We have been fighting wars since before we had written language, but we are also social. We form bonds with others. We create alliances. We remember who helped us and who hurt us. He pulled up images of Earth's diverse populations. We have over 7 billion humans on Earth. We speak thousands of languages. We follow hundreds of religions. We have countless cultures and nations. We fight among ourselves constantly, but the moment an outside threat appears, we unite. Every time. Without fail. You have proof of this? Timrak asked. Our entire history is proof, Manning said. Every time Earth faced a global threat, humans stopped fighting each other and worked together. Pandemics, natural disasters, environmental crises. We put aside our differences and focus on survival. An alien invasion would unite humanity faster than anything else. And after the threat is gone? Timrak asked. We go back to arguing with each other, Manning admitted. But while the threat exists, we are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Because we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for our families, our friends, our culture, our home. That kind of motivation makes soldiers do impossible things. The meeting continued for another hour. Manning showed them defensive preparations, contingency plans, and strategic assessments. Every scenario had been thought through. Every possibility had a response. The humans had been preparing for alien invasion since before they made first contact with alien species. As they left the facility, Timrak felt overwhelmed by everything he had learned. Ralphine walked beside him quietly, letting him process the information. I understand now, Timrak said finally. The Vraks retreated because conquering Earth would destroy Earth. 3 weeks later, Timrak stood before the Galactic Council once again. The massive hall was packed with representatives from every major species. Word had spread about his investigation into Earth and humanity. Everyone wanted to hear what he had discovered. Commander Zixthor sat in his seat, arms folded, waiting. Ambassador Kella had prepared to record everything for the official archives. Even representatives from the Vraks Dominion had attended, though they sat silently in the back rows. Timrak activated his presentation. Images of Earth appeared on the massive screens surrounding the chamber. The blue planet looked peaceful and inviting. 3 weeks ago, Commander Zixthor asked a simple question. Timrak began. Why does nobody attack Earth? I have spent the time since then investigating this mystery. What I discovered will change how we view humanity forever. He pulled up his first set of data. Let me start with what we already knew. Earth has minimal defenses. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. They should be an easy target for conquest. Yet no species has attempted it. I set out to discover why. The presentation moved through his findings systematically. He showed footage of Captain Jake Morrison saving the Lothari ship using impossible maneuvers. He presented testimony from Dr. Vexira about human biology and their terrifying ability to override their body's safety systems. He displayed the survival story of the crashed colony ship and Lisa Chang's warning to the wracks. The council chamber grew quieter as the evidence accumulated. Representatives who had been talking amongst themselves fell silent. The implications became clearer with each new piece of information. Humans are not like other species, Timrak continued. They evolved on what we would classify as a death world. High gravity, violent weather, aggressive wildlife, and frequent natural disasters. Every aspect of their biology is designed for survival in hostile conditions. He showed medical scans and biological data. Their bodies produce combat chemicals that make them stronger and faster under stress. They have redundant organs and aggressive immune systems. They heal from injuries that would cripple most of us. They can push their bodies beyond safe limits through willpower alone. But biology is only part of the story, Timrak said. The real danger lies in their psychology and culture. He displayed clips from human entertainment. Disaster movies, apocalypse scenarios, alien invasion stories. Humans spend their leisure time imagining extinction events and figuring out how to survive them. They turn catastrophe into entertainment. They make games out of disaster preparedness. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the chamber. Several representatives looked disturbed by what they were seeing. This is not paranoia, Timrak explained. This is learned behavior. Earth has experienced 5 major extinction events in its history. Humans survived the last ice age, which killed most other large mammals. They have endured plagues that wiped out 1/3 of their population. They survived 2 global wars that used weapons of mass destruction. Every time disaster struck, humans adapted and continued. He pulled up data from his conversation with Dr. Karen Phillips. They maintain seed vaults with samples of every crop plant. They have genetic databases stored in multiple secure locations. They are building colonies on other planets and moons. They plan for scenarios that may never happen because they refuse to be caught unprepared. Commander Zixthor leaned forward, his interest fully captured. Other representatives took notes frantically. Now let me address the military aspect, Timrak said. I spoke with Colonel Steve Manning, one of Earth's senior defense coordinators. What he told me was both logical and terrifying. He displayed the strategic information Manning had shared. Humans have accepted that they cannot win a conventional war against superior technology. So they have built a different kind of defense. They can destroy their own infrastructure in hours, denying it to invaders. They have hidden bunkers and resistance networks prepared. They have secret colonies throughout their solar system ready to continue fighting even if Earth falls. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. Representatives argued with each other, their voices rising. Timrak waited for silence before continuing. But here is the most important thing you need to understand, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. Human military doctrine is not designed to win wars. It is designed to make wars not worth fighting. They have calculated that any species with the power to conquer Earth will decide the cost is too high. He pulled up historical images from human wars. Human culture celebrates something they call the last stand, fighting to the death rather than surrendering, refusing to give up even when defeat is certain. They tell stories about these battles to their children. They build monuments to soldiers who died rather than retreat. This is not ancient history. This is active cultural identity. They have a saying, Timrak continued, give me liberty or give me death. It means they prefer death to loss of freedom. This is not metaphorical. They mean it literally. When the Vraks offered to protect Earth in exchange for loyalty, humans viewed it as a threat rather than an opportunity. He displayed the footage of Lisa Chang and the crashed colonists. These survivors had been living in hell for 18 months. They had lost friends and family. They were barely holding on. Yet when offered rescue in exchange for Earth's surrender, they refused. They were prepared to die on that moon rather than accept protection that came with strings attached. The Vrax representatives in the back shifted uncomfortably. Everyone in the chamber now understood why they had retreated. "Let me be absolutely clear," Timrak said, his voice grave. "Humans are not invincible. They can be defeated militarily. But defeating them means destroying everything you came for. It means fighting an enemy that will never surrender, never negotiate, and never forgive. It means creating enemies who will fight for generations even after losing their homeworld." He paused, letting that sink in. The Vrax understood this. They looked at humans and saw a species that would rather burn their own planet than let others take it. They saw colonists who survived the impossible and were ready to do it again. They made the smart choice and left. Ambassador Quella stood up. "Are you suggesting humans are a threat to galactic peace?" "No," Timrak said firmly. "I am suggesting the opposite. Humans are potentially our greatest allies precisely because they are so dangerous as enemies. They are social creatures who value cooperation. They form strong bonds with those they trust. They are curious and eager to learn. They want to be part of the galactic community." He pulled up images of humans interacting peacefully with various alien species, trade negotiations, scientific collaborations, cultural exchanges. Every species that has approached humans peacefully has been welcomed. Humans are generous with their knowledge and resources. They are honest in their dealings. They make reliable partners. But, he emphasized, they must be approached with respect. Their boundaries must be honored. Their autonomy must be protected, because the alternative is making enemies of the most stubborn species in the galaxy. Zixthor stood up. "What do you recommend?" Timrak took a deep breath. "I recommend that the Council formally designate Earth as a protected world. Not because humans are primitive and need protection, but because they have earned the right to develop at their own pace. I recommend we establish clear diplomatic protocols for human contact. I recommend we invite them to join the galactic community as equals, not as subjects or subordinates. Most importantly," he continued, "I recommend we educate all Council species about human nature. Make it clear that aggression toward Earth will not be tolerated, not because we fear human military might, but because we respect human determination. Let everyone know that humans make better friends than enemies." The Council chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives argued over the recommendations. Some felt Timrak was overreacting. Others felt he was not taking the threat seriously enough. The debate continued for hours. Finally, Ambassador Keller called for a vote. The proposal was simple. Designate Earth as a protected world with special diplomatic status. Recognize humanity as a sovereign species with full rights to self-determination. Establish formal protocols for contact and cooperation. The vote was overwhelmingly in favor. Only a handful of aggressive species voted against it, and even they did not argue strongly. The evidence was too clear. The pattern was undeniable. Making enemies of humanity was a bad strategy. After the vote, Timrak met privately with Commander Zixthor. The Krillian warrior looked thoughtful. "I asked a simple question and got a complicated answer," Zixthor said. "Nobody attacks Earth because everyone is smart enough to be afraid." "Not afraid," Timrak corrected gently. "Respectful. There is a difference. We should not fear humans. We should respect their capabilities and their choices. We should recognize that they have something most species lack." "What is that?" Zixthor asked. "The will to survive at any cost," Timrak replied, "combined with the wisdom to prefer cooperation over conflict. That combination makes them unique. It makes them valuable. It makes them species we want as friends." Zixthor nodded slowly. "I suppose I understand now. We do not attack Earth for the same reason we do not anger a sleeping predator. Not because we cannot win the fight, but because the fight itself serves no purpose.